Hello,
My
hello. Let's hear about Nepto's favorite thing, yes?
my favorite thing is people misbuilding their players and then just throwing enough TP at the problem that it resolves itself.
Yeah, but what else should you do? I guess, you could have a bad player on purpose, but what else should you do? If you made
Yeah,
a
you
mistake
you could
earlier,
build well from the beginning,
well, yeah,
sort
but
of.
not everyone can be as intelligent as you.
I'm not intelligent.
Well,
Looking
at
at
least
my
one intelligence point gained for reaching the Hall of Fame on your previous player. Very good, very
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
that's true. Thanks. Now I'm also in your elite club, Oko. Just took me one player more than you had.
Uh, yeah,
Hey, I guess I'm officially the worst at player building here because I don't have a Hall of Famer.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm bad.
That's
Not
two
going
more
to be this way
seasons.
for long.
Yeah, or one more season. I don't know which.
Yeah.
Someone was suggesting that I have multiple Hall of Fame players, but I don't think I have.
No, I
No.
don't think so either. Because of Khan Freedom just missing it with just 2 positional awards back then.
Yeah, I think it was just based on the top 100 player list or whatever it was.
Oh, oh
Because
yeah, that thing.
I had like 3 players in that got votes there, but and there were some Hall of Famers who barely got votes in the end. So I think someone was conflating the two. Either
Mm.
way, I don't think of that too much. I just wanted to see, because I was in the Hall of Fame page, that is there something I missed? Maybe I was named into the Hall of Fame and I just didn't know. But no, it was for naught. What's new in the SPA then? I haven't really paid attention since last season start, when I started doing other league sims instead.
Well, King Kanta is retired, which is like huge news. Um, Considering the guy's been the best player in the game for 4 seasons straight, right?
6. 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Wait, who won the MVPs before him? Was that Passes
Thompson and
MVP? Yeah.
Muad'Dib and
I won one, I think.
yeah. You also, yeah.
I was the one non-Ravens slash down player to win one, and then it was back to Kanta, I think.
Very good, very
Let's
good.
check. No, I think no. After you,
Oh no, Purse
MG
won.
finally won his MVP
Purse
because
won.
I remember congratulating him,
Yeah.
and then it was the Kunta show.
Yeah, it was 3 MVPs from Thompson, 3 MVPs from Wadib, then it was Lundell, then it was Purse, and then there was 4 from Kanta. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Very good. Hey,
Cheat.
yeah, I was coaching that team. I should know. I don't think, maybe it was after the season I wasn't able to coach anymore because,
Because you took
yeah,
on simming
yeah,
again.
yeah.
I'm not quite
I'm
sure.
sort of mad because I was just talking about this the other day when I was messaging Town, uh, and everyone who's been part of the decision has, by themselves said, I don't know why we were swayed by one person complaining about Zimmer being GM.
Yeah, it was stupid.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with the decision at all.
And now I wasn't too interested anymore. GLU was saying that, yes, you should apply to be OKC general manager after. But the key point for me, why I was most interested, was to have my own player. And I didn't really want, I guess with the Rampage, I could have sort of now been in the sweepstakes for my next own player, but I also think my next player is sort of bad. I don't want to, I don't want to have bad players either. So
Alright, he's already uncapping your next player because you're always going 8 seasons. I forgot.
Yeah, maybe on this player I can try to do 10 because I have no I can sort of have the same attributes. At least in season 9 as I would have in season 8. Like I guess like
Mm.
just having 99 stealing and 99 quickness and stuff like that is not going to be like too difficult to keep up even in regression. But it
Okay,
remains to be seen.
so maybe tell us a bit about your new player. So I guess he's going to be a super stealing type like Count Freedom was, or
No, I'm gonna model it after Ben Simmons, because now that Ben Simmons is very bad in real life after his back surgeries and stuff like that, you can quite reasonably have a Ben Simmons player in the SPA. Like previously, like when Ben Simmons was in his second year maybe, or his rookie year, because he was injured the first year. Then can't remember the user, but they had a player called, I think it's Torsten Mattsson, and that was also like modeled after Ben Simmons, sort of in a way. And like it went pretty overboard because in the SBA you can have like extra good stat lines and attributes, and now it's more sort of reasonable, I think, especially with the regression bank and stuff like that. You don't need to worry about getting to 36 points per game all of a sudden just because you don't have anywhere else to spend your TPE on.
Yeah.
And I think like 9 assists per game is like sort of reasonable, whereas previously you needed to be a point guard to have like the 10 plus assists of Ben Simmons, and that also goes to the part where Ben Simmons is worse now than he used to, because now you don't need to have 12 assists per game. You can just have 6.6, and then it's a sort of a proxy for real life Ben Simmons currently.
I guess you're trying to do Ben Simmons. You're trying to do the good Ben Simmons, though. Yeah.
Yes and no. Like that's what I was saying, like about how my next player maybe is a bit bad. Like I wouldn't want to possibly coach it at least for the first 3-4 seasons. But it just remains to be seen. Like in real life, he's averaging like 7, 7, and 7. Like that's not interesting.
Yeah.
But
oh,
15,
that has to be
7, and
boring.
7 is a bit more interesting. And he's like, at least before his injuries in his last 2 seasons in Philadelphia, it was like you could tell he's like maybe the best perimeter defender in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And like he always gets his, or used to. I can't say I have seen him play too much this season. Used to get his hands on balls a lot, and like he was leading the league in steals per game and deflections, I think, one season. So like players like that, it's just like it's a reasonable accomplishment to have with the player builds we have now. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be like 7 points a game, but yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I could say you could say it's like I'm trying to be the good Ben Simmons, but also like
Both
maybe it
not.
starts from the bad Ben Simmons and goes to the good Ben Simmons instead of how it's gone in real life, where it starts from the good Ben Simmons and goes to the bad Ben Simmons. I don't think many people will be interested though in having like a no scoring power forward slash small forward with no 3-point shooting either.
I wouldn't say so. I mean, okay, if we take McGriff's recent free agencies as an indicator, then maybe not. Although he's not quite as the defender that you are shaping up to be, if I understand you correctly.
I might
But I would
already be
say
a
in
better
general,
defender, yeah.
if you have like a playmaking free, that's something a lot of teams want to have. Especially since we have 50 guys running around who want to be like a 50 point per game scorer once they've seen Kunta and Foreign do it. So GMs will probably try to get their hands on all the passing and low usage guys that they can get.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a fault, I guess, of FBB, how it just works, right? Like, if you want to be the best team, you only really need one or maybe two guys that can score, but you need every single one of the rest and the scorers even to play defense and to play make and do the other things. It's just scoring for some reason just doesn't matter. You can just throw it to one guy and it just works. So like
Yeah.
I think there will be a market for like the guys that don't score but just play good defense, rebound, and do all the other stuff. Like
Rebound. Well, you've misunderstood Ben Simmons. But yeah, I think like I already have 95 stealing right now, so that's like compared to McGriff's, I don't think 75.
Yes, 80.
Yeah,
80
so
stealing.
it's like already like on the um, upper end of the if if I go to the league as a rookie with 99 stealing and 80 perimeter defense, then it's already on the upper end of the players in the position, so it
oh,
has some merit already. So yeah, I guess it's different from just like being bad on purpose, like really bad.
I mean, I can't really think of some deliberately bad players
I mean,
Hi Terry.
except Sky Terry.
yeah.
Sky Terry
Good
to me
job.
is the only player that was deliberately bad, and he was great at it, to be honest. But otherwise, I'm sure there were a couple guys who were not great, but
Yeah, I think like in the past, like people would have pointed to what's it's called, Cash Me Outside. How about that? Like very old player as like being bad, but also like think with his attributes could have just been misunderstood. Like if he had the Oklahoma City Rampage power behind him, he could have just been a 70-point scorer with 68% true shooting because he already had like the building blocks in his like player build was.
Mhm.
I think he reached 70% true shooting once even.
yeah, I think I remember the name because I wasn't around at the time.
Yeah.
But I saw his name at some point. It was like no defense at all, but very good offense, which can work with the correct team like the Rampage. But
I have no
Well,
idea why I'm not finding him. But
the thing is, like, if you have a team like the Rampage, they wouldn't really want that kind of player though, because you still need some defense, you know? Like
well,
that's
he
the
had sort of some defense, I think. Like
found him. 70
75
stealing,
stealing. Yeah, 70 stealing.
75.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember. Like maybe it was 70, just 70.
Okay, I just pulled up the last index page that I could find in season 43 on the Maulers
Yeah.
with like 31 points per game at the small forward, which is like all right. At 69% true shooting. And
yes,
the year beforehand, 71% true shooting
that's very
on
solid.
31 points per game. I mean, sort of to be expected if you have 99 in all athletics, 99 inside, 99 free throws, 99 3-point shot. Um,
Yeah, and if you think like the like when Kunta was in his first and second year, the Vice team were still like excellent, even though his defense attributes were the same or worse.
yeah,
Especially in the rookie year, and like some would think like the center position is more important even than small forward.
Mm.
So yes, it's like reasonable, but I don't think in the end I don't think that player was that bad either. So it's just like I can't say it's purposefully bad. just never had any real teammates, I don't think. Change
Still
your
made the
goal.
playoffs like 2 times, which is alright for back in the day.
Yeah. Well, in the later parts of his career, the players were expanded to 8 teams, because when he started in 35 or whatever, and it was just smaller. Oh wait, it's been small. It's been 8 teams since forever. No, it was the latter expand. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah, I can't remember very many high TP players that were like intentionally bad. And I guess like even if you start making an intentionally bad player, then at some point you just like reconcile and like don't have like either you bank all the TP or then you just can't spend it that badly that the player is still useless.
Yeah, like if you're close to max earning, you just at some point just by the sheer TP, you will be okay. Worse.
Yeah.
And also like it's tough to just be intentionally bad for like what 10 seasons, including an SBDL career, because that's a long time.
I think that would also be fucking boring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need a lot of mental fortitude. Yeah, that I think that's what he was saying as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like what? That's like 60 weeks. That's over a year. It's a lot of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you need something else to occupy yourself as well. I guess that's how like Molhold is just doing all these weird players, because if he doesn't care about it too much and he doesn't need to do tasks for it like that, like point tasks like a normal player would,
Mhm.
then it's
Mm.
a lot less like, I guess I've been doing this for 9 years now, so I can just like do whatever for 1 year again, or 9 months or 10 months. Like it's not that big of a deal. Whereas someone who's like making their second player, why would they just like make a griefing player all of
Yeah.
a sudden? Like I don't think that would just stick, because maybe at some point you get just like you don't get offers in free agency and stuff like, yeah, actually that was also part of why Cash Me Outside was sort of successful. I think A Dwyer was still the GM for Seattle for some time of that career, so there's no way he would have been left in free agency because he'd have no offers, because he had to be on his own team then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm interested actually. Where would you guys rank King Kanta all time?
Are we
I'm gonna
already
pull up
opening
my
up that door?
I'm gonna pull up my previous rankings and uh, debate internally if it should be 1 or 2. But
I mean, it's hard to argue against one, in my opinion, of the sheer statistical volume that
Yeah.
he has. But at the same time, it all comes back to this whole: can you compare eras? La 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 la. Because this was a quite different era than, let's say, the 40s, for example.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And to me, even though he doesn't have the accolades, he doesn't have the stats, I remain at the point that Jaws was one of the best of all time, and I never want to face him again. Um,
yeah, but
he
it's
was more
pretty much
threatening
the
to me
same.
than Kunta was.
Yeah, but it's still pretty much the same
100%.
player, I think.
Yeah, they were quite similar.
Yeah, I think the number one voted player then, or the players who got number one placed votes, were only Cuatro Nogueira and Marcus McDias, who both played like 45 to 35 seasons ago. So it's very long time to like player builds have evolved so much in that time. Like when Cuatro was leaving the league, the freaks were recently implemented, and now the freaks are already gone after the decimation they brought upon the DA. So
Man, looking back at it, it's wild to me that Jaws only won a single MVP and Center of the Year award. Like, man,
Yeah, the 40s had some insane competition.
yeah, yeah.
And he also had some internal competition, if you want to say so, because it wasn't like today where you have like one or two scoring options and the rest is just focusing on something else. I mean, if you look at the Ravens back then, you had like Sebastian Steele, you had Eyal, you had I don't know who else, Senna Sharp for the mid 40s. A lot of future Hall of Famers, of course, but also a lot of guys who also had the ball in their hands and were very good at it.
Yeah. There were also just like more players on teams now. 'Cause I believe like in the 40s, 6 guys was just the standard. There
Yeah,
were
I'm not sure if it was really the standard. Maybe with inactives, somewhere around there.
yeah, because a lot of teams like had bench, like when that time when Jeff and Houston were in the finals every time. I always used to make fun of the every off season where sort of better players were artificially made to play in teams like the Ironmen or what's it called, Monarchs or whatever stuff like that, because it was more effective, or it was seen as more effective to have 6 players instead of just 5 at
Mhm.
that time. So yeah, I guess it wasn't like the standard, but the highly competitive teams, it was seen as the better team building strategy to employ for a while. I think the Rail were the only team of that like sort of 10 season span to be champions with only 5.
Yeah, I remember that was like a big thing back then.
Yeah, because
But
like since actually longer than that, because since like season 39 uh, to season 50, or the time when Vice won it with Edward Craven Walker being the finals MVP. Like throughout that period, it was like always 6 man teams winning the championships, other than the Rail, I think.
hmm.
Who was the sixth man for the season 43 Ravens?
Which team is season 43? I wasn't there. But was it
43
like
was
Rashid
the
Ryder on the
74 win
bench?
Ravens
Was it
against the
like
74 win Nightmare. So
Rashid
I'm
Ryder
not
on the
quite sure.
bench, I think? Because he was on the bench for 2 seasons.
Yeah, that could be.
Like it's Calderon, Kurtz, McConway, and who else? Let's see. Kendall
Danielson.
Battle and Rashid Ryder were the small forwards, and Lucas Danielson. So it was like Battle was the higher of the 2 players in TP, so Ryder was on the bench.
Hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
And they also what? No, actually the wrong player. There was a Kilibo Kilimbeanja, and I thought it was what's it called, the second player for Baylor Swift, Ilo Zumba. I thought they had 7 players.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I thought they all.
Kobe Ilozumba.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was only 6. And yeah, I guess maybe it was like more efficient for the time because there was a lot more money and a lot more players, which made a lot more money, like for the salary cap.
Yeah,
But
but also I think what factored in a lot at the time were the discounted contracts, at least in comparison for rookies and regressing players.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
So
easier.
those often ended up being the sixth man, while the highly expensive guys would only take up a couple of spots. And that's why Brooklyn and Houston cycled through players up to year 6 and then shipped them off for cheaper talent, I believe, and a bunch of first overall picks usually.
Yeah.
Well timed.
A lot of the players also who won Finals MVP or Playoffs MVP at the time were like, it was always the year 8 or year 9 premium guy who just came in. Like, that's also like when you read the history of SBA playoff MVPs, it's you have like Roy Johnson and Andrew Wall and like random guys like that, and even sort of Michael McConway Jr., who only spent like 1 or max 2 years with the team before they
Mm.
retired because they were just like hired guns with very high TP totals. So yeah, it makes sense with the old contract system. Actually, can't even
Good old
remember
times.
how much of it is actually in monetary value different from now.
I think it was like 500,000 or a million more for guys in their prime years. Because I remember the change was made as I was just about to leave my rookie contract with my first guy. And I missed out on additional cash. And I was like, what the fuck?
Ah, yes, because instead of like, yeah, the contract values weren't like sort of lowered for players outside of
Uh,
the prime. It was just they were raised for players in their prime because prime was actually like a designation.
yeah. And in the prime, then obviously that's pushed up the total number, the total cap number in SBAO.
Yeah. So like right now, Kane Fox Jr. is earning 4 million a year in regression, and I'm earning like 7 million. So it's still like a very hefty discount because
Yeah,
but it's very difficult to make up for 100 TP now.
yeah, I was about to say, aren't you like 400 TP ahead of him? So I would say that's well worth the additional price tag.
Yeah, and also like if you think about it, for a player in regression to cost 4 million, that's like 1/4 of the like not 1/4, but more than 1/5 of the salary cap space allocated or allowed still. It's still a lot
Mm.
to make a like longer agreement. Like you don't want to have regressing players for multiple years. I don't think now. But
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on the player, I guess, right? Because if he is just going to die off slowly because he's spending all his cash, then yeah, you probably don't want to. But players that bank a lot, like part of the reason why OKC was so good last year was because Kanta and Young just spent all their money. So Kanta was in theory a year 9, but he was just basically as good as ever because he had millions saved up from all the maxes and super maxes and bonuses and shit. So definitely depends on the regressed player.
yeah, because especially like if you like sort of maximize what you have, like they did there, like obviously it makes more sense then. But if you just have a play, well, I don't think Picks now is also like sort of wasting time or wasting away because he always makes good players and makes good decisions. Maybe not like I don't know about his free agency decisions or if they have been decisions or whatnot, but at least for his player build and progression, it's always been good. So
Yeah.
maybe then it also would make sense, especially now that he has a new player already in the SPDL, and say that he would be wasted.
And like also I believe nowadays there's more of a market for these regressed guys. Because you can't really do the thing anymore when you just draft pretty people and let them grow because you just won't be able to afford them nowadays.
Yeah,
So you kind of need to have some of these cheaper guys and locking in like a year 9 picks now for 2 years, like that's pretty good. Like even if he's not going to, you know, uh, by the time he's like year 10 or whatever, he's not going to be your main guy, but he can be pretty good still, especially for the money.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like didn't really think about it that much for a while, but after the max and supermax contracts were introduced, like it's rare to have like more than one premium pick for a team in a draft, because like when they both hit the year mark where they can get a max contract, then they would be theoretically competing inside your team for the max contract.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense. Like you'd rather sort of do it in a more like we have this one homegrown star player and just rotate everything around instead.
I
Just
mean, that
like
same goes for consecutive draft passes as well, because you can only award a max every 2 years. So you either have to delay someone else's max and risk alienating them for some reason, or they don't get a max anyways, or whatever.
yeah, but I guess like teams now have more of a staggered progression. Like let's see what's the top team right now. Like who is number one like after the first teams? I think it's like
I think
Brooklyn.
Miami it's right now, even though
Oh
I
yeah.
don't believe they are the team to beat for this season by a far shot. Yeah,
Yeah,
Miami is
yeah.
currently on
Miami
top.
has the very fun team. I think I never know how they win those games. Even when I was like sort of doing the Sims when they turned it around a bit, where they like consolidated like some of their 9 players to just 6. Well, yeah. Who else is up
I
there?
think their
Brooklyn.
hot start is mainly if you look at their competition. It's Jokers, I think 1 or 2 times, Pittsburgh 1 or 2 times, Thunderbirds, Corsairs, Knights.
Yeah.
Then in between there one Prowlers game, okay, I will admit that's a good win. And then a loss to the Bullets. So mostly bottom of the table teams, which you need to beat if you want to be in the playoffs, but not the wins you need to be in a championship contending
Yeah.
position.
But
So
they
let's
have
see how
a
the next couple of sims go.
the Brooklyn and sort of Miami also. They have a more of a traditional like age ages inside their team where it's like one prime guy and then one player 2 years younger and then one prime young guy like
Mhm.
in year 3 or year 4. And like in Boston we have like year 12, year 8, year 6, year 4, and then I think well, Tobias Garrett is also year 4. So it's sort of like a more of a staggered thing now where they could theoretically all be sort of uh, on the same progression plan, just on separate timelines. You know,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like Latimer is on his way to retirement soon, and I'm also on my way to retirement. But in theory, at least, like I would expect it to be more common, even to have like players like get a new premier player in like every age group, sort of like one prime, then one sub prime, then one who just entered max contract age, and then one rookie, like, and then they just grow accordingly.
My first instant was what's on the Ravens roster right now? Because if there's a team that has the draw and the draft capital to get like a star in every age group, it's the Ravens. But they're actually quite old, if you want to say so. So
Well, they're all prime,
Aviola
right?
in year 8, Koenig in year 7, and I don't know what Kramer is in right now. I think year
Year
6.
6. He's year 6.
And then you have Gunner at year 2 also. So quite an old team.
Yeah, that's also more of the traditional form where you just have like hard hitting players, and then you have like a very hot prospect, sort of young player. But maybe it just also depends on more with interpersonal relationships now that there's like less and less new people. Like maybe just some guys want to be on teams with specific people instead of specific other people, and maybe they know the GM from previous whatever, or then they just go where they feel like they have a best chance at the championship in free agency. So it's also a lot more than just like what the GMs would want to do, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Like a huge part of the job as GM is just building trust with your players. Like even if they don't play for you yet, they might someday, or they might again.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I spent like 12 seasons in
Yeah, I
Charlotte.
know, but it's interesting. It's interesting how much the game has changed. Like even just over the course of the couple of seasons I was GM. Like when I was starting compared to when I won when we won the first ring with Nepto and Zeke, and then now it's just like a whole different, completely different game.
Yeah, the
Oh
game within the game.
yeah, yeah,
And when the funnel meter, you remember, Oko, you mentioned it in the chat a couple of days prior, when we talked in like the start of the 50s about funnel bigs opposed to like passing and supporting bigs because Serrano just won 2 MVPs and you were also on your next passing big with Akili, and there was like, hey, what do you think is better, funneling or passing big? And now we've had this like 10 seasons, if we count Thompson and Muad'Dib in as well, of a super funnel big meta being established more or less.
Yeah, I don't think I foresaw back then, like, even if I would have said that players like Hawkins and Jaws are like very cool and very fun. I probably didn't foresee the amount of players like who just behave like enabling bots, sort of like who are defense first, and they just sort of leave no other mark on the SBA than who are the fourth best player on a championship team. Like I maybe didn't foresee the amount of players who are that way. Like maybe I still overstate it a bit because like Mason Young is the poster child for this, of course, because he's still like, well, now he's in regression, but Socatre hasn't been active for a very long time,
yeah.
and he's like still being the key player in so many finals teams and so many championship teams.
Because you just need these pieces, you know. Good. Just how the game works nowadays. You need the guy, the glue guy, who's gonna do the stuff that doesn't show up on the box score.
Yeah, but I maybe just didn't foresee the possibility of having those sort of players. Like,
Yeah.
I guess even in the worst instances, like just Detroit Red was the glue guy instead, and that's a
Yeah.
filler. Like,
Yeah,
maybe I didn't, or absolutely I didn't foresee it going that far, where you could just have a sort of a filler with not too impressive attributes,
I don't
kinda
think
do the
anyone
same
really
thing.
did.
Yeah, but
I mean, I
definitely.
remember one free agent pitch in like Magnus' second season or something like that, um, where OKC pitched Cerro Miedo back then, and I don't know what Congo the flop was on back then, past first one, um, to sort of build a team of mostly passes around Magnus just to have a shot at the scoring record again, which was set by Baramy a couple years prior. And we ended also at like mid 40s in points per game, and it was like, no, that's not sustainable. And then a couple years later, Thompson rolled around and just did it.
Yeah.
Was quite interesting.
Yeah. What like other sort of players would have been on those final teams? Like, who was the guy before Helmsley then?
Oh
Or
my god, thinking.
or was it
Omar.
just Lundell and Young as center and power forward?
We did have Omar Blue.
Yeah, Blue.
Yeah, fan favorite
Brother
forever
Blue.
and OKC like a legend.
Yeah, I think it was
Oh,
just like
yeah. We had Overlord. We had Dietmar Smash.
Yeah.
yeah.
He
Yeah, I was
was
thinking more of the power forward position, but I think it was just Mason Young most of the
yeah, it was either Mason Young or Dietmar playing power forward. Like they
Or Omar. Omar also played power forward.
and Lumumba and Icebox and whoever else shitters killers there were. But yeah, I just like uh, what I was saying earlier. Like if you have players like well, Helmsley has a long career ahead of him. But like if you somehow never win a defensive player of the year, you like sort of maybe do stuff, but not really. And then if you don't like make deep playoff runs with your teams and stuff like that, it just feels. I'm not sure if it feels worse to be like that sort of like defense first, like help the team out, but no team success, than if you were like more of a selfish, just like I'm gonna be on the league leaders for scoring or scoring efficiency and still have no success. Like I can't really compare the two because like I don't know, maybe I haven't had that good or that bad of players or team situations ever, but
Mhm.
it's like it's just weird how many inactive or filler players they just end up doing the same sort of a job that a free agent signing would when you have this funnel center meta.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible for me to know. Like if I had known it, I would have done much better as the GM of the Pittsburgh Ironman. But
I can tell you like the weirdest thing I ever did as GM were the off seasons where I spent like a week negotiating filler trades.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like at the time you just needed the good fillers and there were 4 fillers that were not horrible trash. 3 of them were on Houston and then like the last one was just a fight to get. I think that was wild.
I never found that very difficult though.
Yeah, I feel like the players are now better with fillers as well. It was
Yeah,
harder for the moment when fillers weren't drafted because you had to either trade for them or you had to get them in the wire.
yeah.
And it's easier if you can draft them in the first because like I never drafted a real player, I don't think. Uh, or if I did, like they went in active straight away or something. But
Did
And
you
you
not?
drafted yourself.
Yeah, did
oh,
you not
I
draft
mean,
yourself or Elena?
yes, I did draft myself.
Or
That's true.
Elena was from Mexico. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. She arrived at free agency.
But if I could have just spent all those draft picks that just kind of yoinked into nothing on good fillers, like that would have been much easier for sure.
Yeah, but I always spent a lot of time because I had like, it's like not something to really brag about, but I didn't ever manage to like form a real nice team, like a really really competitive like championship contender ever. But I also like managed to very much overperform the expectations and like sort of not even point differential, but stuff like that by just like having all the best rim protecting fillers and all the best steals fillers and all the best 3 point fillers at least. Just like if you need to give like 11 minutes per game as shooting guard and small forward to a guy who actively is like ruining your team, then obviously you're gonna lose a lot of games across like 3 or 4 seasons.
Mm.
And yeah, what I always found key was that I just spent my all my waiver wire like priority on fillers, and I always tried to pick the ones that were either I created myself, of course, because I knew them to be good at least. And then like I just focused on players who were like year 1 or year 2, so I could then have them for like 7 seasons. I
Yeah.
also remember once when Evans was Brooklyn GM, uh, he was like very alert by a filler I had, and he was like, "Oh, you always have these fillers," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's yeah, well, thankfully, yeah, I can put this guy in the trade as well because I had highest waiver priority, and there was like a carbon copy of that player in the waiver wire. I don't know why
Mhm.
Evans wouldn't just pick them up instead. Stuff like that because I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I was just also talking about this with Abadan when I was covering for him when he was away last week, and why I would sign Stojan Moldonovic to the team as a filler. And he's like, well, it's a freak. That's the biggest penalty, blah, blah, blah. But also, like, in
Nah.
terms of attributes, it was the highest blocking and fouling combination of all the fillers left over who can play center. Then it really doesn't matter if there's like minus 20 or minus 15 strength or minus 15 jumping or stuff like that.
Yeah, that does not matter at all for fillers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
even
if
if they
you,
have 20 fouling, I could care less if they cover the ground for 3 minutes per game.
yeah. But like either, I always try to look at it as like either you need to have, or like always highest blocking is very good, or highest 3 point shot. Like that's obviously like what, because that's the easiest jobs for them to do within their attribute means, because you don't really need much else. And then, yeah, it's maybe some people like for fillers, even maybe some people who don't care about it too much need to see the concept or proof like within their team still, like even though there's like 70 seasons of history with fillers now.
But you mentioned that you never had competitive teams. Didn't you headline some of those Ironman teams that went to the finals with like Frost?
Yeah, but
I think
I
that were your teams as well.
I didn't do anything to them because it was the same. Like 4 players were there when I already like took over the team. Like it was Frost, Cannon, and then Studs player Harris. They were all there already. Like
Ah, okay.
because like with whatever poverty shit I did, uh, we were able to get to the finals. I think. But if I had more of a cutting edge, I think we could have easily been champions that season as well because we sort of rolled through the playoffs quite easily that one year. So that's
But
what I'm
then
saying.
then came the Ravens.
Yeah, yeah, but they were also like, yeah, and we also lost to the Rail in the final. That was the well, that was one season before I got there. Maybe I don't know. Either way, yeah. If I had like more of a astute game plan, and if I like sort of started making the moves like earlier in the previous season, that I've always found a key factor in winning teams, like when they already have their trades and team building sort of done before the previous season ends, like in the start of playoff week. Like if I had the patience and interest to do all that, like be on the top of the trade talks and stuff like that, then it maybe would have been much better. But still, like I've enjoyed it a lot anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one here who never had like the head GM position. Because I know, as you mentioned, I never had like the motivation to do all this work. I wasn't interested in it, and I also hate having responsibilities. I want to be able to get up and leave at any point.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you like, it is work. Like definitely, especially if you're like at the turning point where you just need to get shit done. Like I remember when when our original LPC squad just all like started and went, and like that off season where we got content and all and Rossi and Smith and all that. That was like 2 weeks of testing, DMing people, getting permission to talk, testing again, talking with other people, uh, making Mo hate me, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
So
it
like,
maybe would have been much more helpful for me if I did it like instead of simming. If I started being a GM instead of being a simmer at that time, like a couple of years ago, because then
mhm.
I would have had less real life responsibility and like not much else to do because I was like very uh, interested in all things regarding SPA. Like almost every night I was talking to someone like Nano or Shaka or Sixers or even Robo or Pancake or guys like that, and podcasts and anything. Like I was doing tests and all that sort of stuff, but like they wouldn't equate to much because I was also the one doing the simming, so I couldn't really like I could like offer some knowledge and tips to my GM, but like I didn't really want to be sort of inauthentic and like test to see how my player would do with real strategies and stuff like that because that's like, well, obviously I could, but I can't share that information with anyone. Is the
Mhm.
Yeah,
point.
that
So it's if I had started being a GM then, maybe it would have been different because I would have had a lot of time and a lot of interest. But instead, like after being the especially the SPA simmer for so long, like a lot of it feels like it's solved already. Like until the contract structures or something like that, like change again, where the new most efficient like team building strategy is found out again. Like it just comes like sort of organically instead of like uh spending 100 hours pressing buttons on the game. Like I just don't have that sort of interest anymore.
Yeah, like I definitely get that. Like I guess it's why I stepped down, because I just kind of I did all I wanted to do, and I just don't have the interest
Start
to keep
over with different players.
and just keep on doing it. I could do it, but I just don't have the interest and I don't really want to put in as much work as I know is needed to like be as good as I was.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't want to just be mediocre.
yeah. Well, yeah, that also like came from the time when I was doing Sims, like just talking to Chillzone and Sixers and Town, and even Jeff at times, like about how they approach it and how much like trade talks and like sort of massaging of like different things and relationships they had to do. It's like I sort of learned a lot just by like talking with them and everyone else, but it's just I don't think it's never been in my nature to be that way either. Like sort of a hustler,
Hmm.
especially like the way you would like sort of could win in trade talks by withholding information and like sort of
yeah,
otherwise being an asshole and trying to just maximize everything. There's a lot of possibilities for that, but I also
it,
respect like the relationships more than just like maybe three or more wins or a 20% higher likelihood of reaching the finals or stuff like that.
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's still a difference between withholding information and doing winning trades for yourself. Um, I mean, obviously, you could tell GMs, hey, it's dumb that you're trading this pick to me. It's going to be a lottery pick. Maybe they still think, no, it's not going to be a top 5 pick, so you can have it, and we'll go ahead with the trade. But there's also some GMs who are kind of trying to fleece you on purpose, and that's the asshole kind of jamming that I could never ever in a million years do. Um, because if you go into a trade with the attention I want to fleece him, then you're just going to act like an ass. during the whole negotiation.
Hmm.
Yeah, but more of the lying part, like it's at sometimes like I would have known a player on my team. Like when I first started GMing for Pittsburgh, for Pancake on Canon had earned like normally and was like number 2 in his class, but he was saying, "No, I'm not going to be doing max earning and stuff like that." But I also found that his player was still very good, and uh, because I knew him as a friend, and then also I knew his player was already pretty good. I knew I could rely on it, but if I wanted to be more cutthroat, I could have just traded him instantly and never like give out the information to the other team that he was going inactive and stuff like that. Because I could have gotten much more than what I ended up getting in production from him, like for future years as well. But it's just like I didn't really want to even do that because I found it much more fun to have a team with Stud and Cass and just like all together instead of being more of a mercenary thing. But maybe I could have in a previous time been more proactive and just yeah, okay, fuck off. Let's have a new team. Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but maybe it's not in your nature to do this.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's what I was saying. Like I just don't have it in my character, I don't think. But it's also like you could approach it in different ways. Like if you just have a better evaluation, like I'm sure Tomato has better evaluation of players than I do, just as like value and asset proposition. But maybe it's because I just never like outside of the podcasts and stuff like that. I don't really think about it too much anymore. So I've like sort of washed up. You fell off, all those sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I never really traded much. Like, I mostly, like, I was big on free agency, I guess, and on trading away my picks for minor stuff. Like, that's how I run my team. I guess it was when I came into the league, it was known as the Evans way of the nightmare, I guess. So, like, to me, like, the valuation of trade deals is probably the toughest part of GMing. Like, if you just maybe not the most important, but like understanding if you're getting fleeced or if you're getting good value, like that takes a lot of finesse and knowing both the league and the game and everything. Because it's all just depends on what you need and what you have and what the other guy needs and what the other guy has. And who are you trading with? Like, are you trading with a team that's going to win 15 games? Or are you trading with Houston? Like, uh,
What's
it's
worse if trading with Houston if they're gonna win 15 games, because then you know like you really fucked up because they're just gonna come back stronger and stronger, and then someone's gonna find a way to blame you, I guess. But
I
yeah,
miss
in terms of player
those draft threads.
evaluation, I also meant like in general, like free agency or trades. I just
Mhm.
think you have a much higher idea of it than I do, because I even when I was a GM, I was just like more of a yeah. I was looking at the attribute pages, just in terms of like raw talent instead of like what's this do for my team,
Mhm.
because then you achieve a certain baseline where you can't fall off, but then maybe you can't reach the ceiling either, really. Whereas you probably saw a much clearer ceiling a lot of the time, and I just like spent my time doing whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, I also just had, I guess, simple plans, you know? Like if you look at how OKC was built most of the time, when I needed something that was a very specific type of player to do a very specific type of thing.
Yeah.
So it was easier to just okay, who is the guy that I need? It was usually like one, maybe two, and like a third one that kind of fits but not really, so kind of want the first two. it's definitely harder if you're like building a team from scratch because
They don't know what roles you will need in
yep,
the near future. Because
exactly.
even if you have like your first one or two guys down, and then you have like a high draft pick coming in next season, but you don't know who you will be getting with that pick.
Yeah, and even if you already have the guys, you don't always know what they're gonna be. Like I was lucky with you, Nepto, and and with Town, I guess, and a lot of the players I had that they just had very clear ideas of what they want to be. But like all too often, there's a guy that's like, I'm gonna play defense and pass, and for 3 seasons that's what he does, and he says that's boring. I'm gonna be a scorer now, and you're just fucked because you didn't plan for that.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you said earlier about like you need to balance, or in your head you need to balance the trades to be like if it's valuable to you and if it's valuable to the other team. And the only thing I was thinking of really was the time when I traded for the Rauta Perse pick in the draft, because
It,
I traded all my first round picks to move up 2 spots.
yeah, I
And
remember because I was on the other side of the trade.
yeah, I don't think it like was really problematic for anyone at
No,
all, because Pittsburgh pick ended up being
worth nothing.
15, 16, 17, and a lot of the reaction was that isn't this too high of a price to pay? Like this was like comparable to the flex trading for Kermskis thing we talked about, and Nepto, you remember?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you
I
know you
remember.
can have a top player, someone you're friends with for 10 seasons or like 9 seasons, then what does it matter if you give even 2 other top 5 picks in the next drafts or stuff like that? Because it's it's no guarantee that they are gonna help the opposite team as much. Sort of, you give yourself the longest runway possible if you have like a player you can rely upon for 10 seasons instead of, I guess it's a balance between short term and long term, because the other side could sort of flip the immediate assets to win a championship like now, but it's still not guaranteed. Whereas if you think it's 99.9% guaranteed that you can get a player for 9 to 10 seasons, that's a long runway to do stuff with. What did you think of the trade deal then? 'Cause- oh wait, actually, I think we talked about this. It didn't end up
You mean
mattering
the,
too
the
much.
Pittsburgh Charlotte trade back then?
Yeah, because it didn't end up mattering at all. I think we
No,
just,
it didn't matter in the end, and for us it was also we liked a couple of guys back then at the top of the draft, and we're like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
whatever we are getting of those, we are fine with it. Um, to be honest, Bobby is way better at evaluating players and all this than I ever was. Um, because if it would have gone on my end, we would have drafted Duke Williams or traded for him. I don't know if anyone even remembers that player because he went up going inactive in his rookie season, but was fantastic as a first gen in the SBDL. So I thought like, hey, that's going to be a future superstar point guard. Um,
Indeed.
yeah, didn't work out well. No, but we were fine with whoever we got on the top of that draft. And so we thought like, okay, if we can get like a little extra and the little chances there that it ends up mattering. Well, but I think in the end it worked out well for both sides.
Yeah. I was gonna ask if you guys saw the article recently posted called "Early Season 70 MVP Candidates," but then I remembered it was Nepto, you yourself, who wrote it. So I was gonna bring up the idea that someone was saying in response, or a couple of people were saying in response, that there's no way a guard would win MVP again, especially in a year like this. I don't see it possible, but you gave a very nice shout out to Elena Rossi in the end there. But what do you think are the like how much of a poverty, like power forward slash center group of players would you need to have to, or how good of a point guard slash shooting guard player you'd need to have a guard win MVP?
Honestly, uh, I believe a guard could win MVP. It's just a matter of time until someone tries to do a funnel for a guard and makes it work. Because honestly, like nowadays, you just have to have, with how many teams are doing funnels for bigs, you just need that because you need the volume and you need the team that's good enough so you're in the top 4 seeds because you're not getting MVP if you're not the top 4 seed. So like honestly, if you can have a player at a guard spot funneled enough so they get like 35 points per game and like a bunch of everything else, why the hell not?
Yeah, a couple of people
I,
have propositioned the idea of just have a dominant offensive guard.
I think the biggest problem with a funnel guard is that due to the nature of the positions in FBB, you have a very high turnover count if you funnel into a guard. Because unlike a center, they will accumulate turnovers. Even if they have a 10.0 turnover rate, they will be 5.5 turnovers or whatever in the end.
Yeah,
And for the MVP conversation, and that's a problem all non-bigs run into for the conversation, is blocks. You can be as great as an offensive player, maybe even in a down year for bigs, get the same efficiency from the guard position that a big gets. But you are still going to be down like what, 3 blocks per game? Let's say 2.5 if you are a decent shot blocking guard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big hill you have to climb. I actually think this year is one of those years where God could win the MVP because none of the MVP candidates are really that dominant, at least in comparison to the recent years. Because everyone has sort of like a flaw. Like Udoka doesn't have rebounding and also not the best team record. Livin defense, Kane Fox Jr. could be shaky. Depends a lot on Simluck, I would say. You Oko, you have like not the biggest scoring load and also not the biggest defensive numbers because you have a lot of competent defensive players on your team. And for Bayo, it's basically just offense is not there in the volume that he needs. So Rossi could have an outside shot as a dark horse, but it's going to be very difficult, especially for the blocks part. I think that's going to hold her back in the final conversation and the efficiency, I suppose, for
yeah.
Rossi in particular.
Actually, this season my offensive like usage is the same, but in the first teams of the year, my players been shooting like 49% field goal percentage. So the 30 points could easily turn to 40 points in the next 70 games if the efficiency reaches the same marks as it did last season. Like I think we had the same thing with well, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's reminded me of the when King Kunta was in his final year or the prime year. Tomato was messaging me saying about like asking like, is there something wrong with the game? Because Kunta
Oh
is
yeah.
down. Kunta is down like point 7 like true shooting from last season, and he has like 150 TP more. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I haven't. I can check, and I will check. There's nothing wrong. I also
It was
haven't paid attention to it, but it's actually been very.
it wasn't really even about the efficiency, it was just like about team performance
Oh
overall.
yeah. Because you
We
were
just
losing a
suck.
lot. You were losing a
Like,
lot of tight games. Like
yeah,
every game that was within 5 points or whatever, you just lost. So you had like 15 losses more than the Pythagorean algorithm would have given you. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember.
It was like we won 54 games.
And
Like
we're the
that,
best team.
yeah.
Very
that, that,
interesting.
that was literally I think my second worst season as GM by wins, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it is.
and it was just confusing as hell because I tested a lot that season, and I was like confident we'd be way above 60. Like we're a great team. We got this, and then just the sim happens, and just like what is happening? I don't know. It
Yeah,
was
I
a very
remember after the All-Star break, I was every day checking, like triple checking that I have everything right, that there's no like 8 3-point usage instead of 80 and stuff like that, because
yeah.
it was getting like very curious. Like at some point, you were like 11 games back of the Ravens, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wait, but you just beat them by 26 points away. How does that make sense? And then I really started paying attention to it, but it was just nothing. Just
Yeah, it was
fuck off. I don't know.
literally just this the game screwing with us. Like
Yeah.
that's I wrote an article about it. I remember like a quote.
Oh yeah, I also remember. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was just it was a trip, that's for sure. And then we made the finals. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Because that was the season I went to Toronto, and I was like, is I think the Sims in the first like 2 weeks got a lot of engagement, like all of a sudden, like
Hmm.
surprising amount of engagement. I was like, oh yeah, it's going cool. Like everyone's having a lot of fun. And then one guy just started messaging me, "What's wrong? It's the game is shit. What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Hey, sort of put a dent on the entire season." But I think in the end it was fine. Although you ended up losing maybe in the finals.
Yeah, losing
Yeah,
in 7.
yeah. So it wasn't fine after all.
Yeah.
But those were good playoffs as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean it was a good series. I think it went to 7, didn't it?
Yes,
But
because it
yeah.
was you were leading 3-2, but then the last two games were at Houston because they had the number one seed. So then they
Yeah.
won the yeah.
Just like old times.
Just like all times, yes. But there was a lot of I think that season I remember like I had to spend a long time like just doing the playoffs because there was no sweeps or like barely any sweeps, I think. It was like
Mm,
always uh for the first round after the bye rounds because this was after the realignment. It was like 30 games. Like I know it can be 30 games. It's 7 times 4 the maximum amount, but it's still like felt like 30 games, and it was a lot of fun in the end. I also wanted to. I don't know how long we're gonna keep talking, but I wanted to ask you about a couple of the announcement that's in the new in the SBA because I think at least one of you is a
I'm out of
SB
the back office.
yeah
I
SBA.
Tomato is still in
I'm
there.
still a board member though, yeah.
Yes. So there was one thing I wanted to sort of have a joke about. There was in January there was 2022 SBA Member Awards, the Dedication Award, General Manager Award, Head Coach Award, the New Member Award, and I remember like Adrest winning 3 of the awards or something.
Yeah.
I know Tomato was the nominee for General Manager of the Year, but I don't think he won it. I think
No,
it went to
someone.
Town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I also remember voting for Town because I was charting it out like the calendar year in terms
Yeah.
of like what's the seasons like. And I thought it was like sort of 50-50, but then
It was not. It really was not. Yeah.
in which way it would like,
It was sound all the way. I voted for him. Like if you looked at it, like as you said, if you charted out the whole year, it was just like, oh, there were
yeah, in that way, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like I said it was 50-50, but like I meant 50-50 was in like because the newest like the recency bias was all the way to OKC because I think then it was Inferno in the finals, even not Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, well, this is over, but it's already December. If it's now over and the past 11 and a half months have been Houston, then it's definitely for Houston. Yeah, I remember voting for Town. I also remember voting because I don't know if you could abstain from voting in the form because it was just like all four questions in one form, and I had no idea who would win the head coach of the year award, and I was like, I don't think there had been like very long tenured head coaches anyway, other than Beast. So I found it funny how Adrest won the award still, but like I haven't looked into it too much. I just voted for Beast because he was the head coach for longer.
Yeah, I voted for Beast as well.
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
you know,
yeah,
it's a good example of why award voting isn't open to everyone. You know, the, at the end of the day, if it's a vote if it's an open vote for everyone, it's kind of just a popularity contest,
yeah,
and that's not bad. You know, it's how it is.
yeah. I was also about to say the exact same thing about how Adrest has cultivated so many positive relationships with people that they just feel drawn to vote for him, even though like even if like maybe they know the facts and they just think a certain way, or if they don't know, they just default to him. But I found it very curious at the time because I was like, I can't remember like what any one of these people have been doing, but I know like I nominated GLU for dedication of award, and I voted for him just because like I thought he had found a new like sort of flame for Simli commissionership and doing FIBA, like
I,
rejuvenating FIBA, and then also starting doing simming for SPDL, and then wanting to be a general manager. I just found it like extremely endearing because he was away for a while and then he's been putting a lot of work in to make like sim presentations much nicer than mine and stuff like that. But
mhm.
it's still, I think people favored rap and then I addressed and then Emides even more than GLU anyway. So just goes to show it's not for me either, the voting.
Yeah, I think with Trap, a lot of the things she does are not visible to the public. But basically, in the back end, I think many things would fall apart in League without her.
Oh
Um,
yeah, as a bot
because she
master,
takes on every job. She says, like, "Okay, new job, give it to me. I'm getting this done."
yeah,
Bam.
I can definitely say that if Trap leaves, the league is just um, it- well fucked, I guess. Like she does so much stuff, and even if she doesn't do it herself, she's like organizing someone to do it. So
Yeah, it's just good
it's great.
leadership, like in general, very good leadership.
Yep.
And yeah, the other announcements recently were the regression bank that I was in
Mhm.
the board of directors when it was first, I think, first.
I think it was also still there when it was first proposed, but I
Yeah,
can't quite remember.
yeah, I think I remember reading Town's proposal for it, even if it was not Town. I remember reading Town's proposal for how to better it either way.
Yeah.
That's, I'm not sure if that's, like a lot of people have been suggesting that this just goes more towards the min maxing of circumventing salary cap and having more dynasty and stuff like that. But like, I don't know what's it matter really,
Yeah,
because
like I think
it's
people kind of
they they would find a way to further their own like dynasties within the current rules
yeah.
anyway, because it's been proven already. So why not just have a different way for people who want to have like my presented idea of a player, like where you have like a PJ Tucker who you can play for 15 seasons and do the same thing for 15 seasons because of the regression ban. Like that's pretty much the same as having Xavier May Jones for 8 seasons and then having Mason Young for the next 8 seasons. Like, what's the difference?
I agree. I agree completely. Like I see I think people misunderstood what it was supposed to be at first, maybe. Because I saw a lot of people thinking that the regression bank didn't get regressed and stuff like that. But it's literally just a way for people to make being a lower TP kind of guy viable, and I think
Yes.
that's fun.
Yeah. Because then you don't need to have your team pay 2.5 million extra salary for all the bank TP you have. And there's even a tied in penalty where you can't access the money again or the TP again until you are in regression. Whereas in the past, like where we had this like Joe Cooper sort of stuff, people were like positing like, oh, maybe he's gonna spend for year 8 that he's gonna be 1,700 TP, stuff like that. But now there's just like sort of a tied in. It's not really a penalty, but it's a downside risk where
Hmm.
if you put it away, then it's really put away until the set amount of time. And yeah, I think it's fine. Like I've always thought it's fine, and I like the player ideas of that you can achieve without being a nuisance to your team, and also like still working towards carryover. That's the most important part. I think.
Yeah, I think we will see another like Dieter Smith kind of guy who just tries to use the regression bank and be a role player for 12 seasons. Um, I don't think that's a lot of fun for me personally, but who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
whatever
will.
floats your boat, right? Like you just if you don't want to, you don't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, because right now it's not gonna take anything away from anyone, and it's very well tied into the next announcement that was made. That is second players for people who have already accrued 3 players with 1,350 or more TP, and that way I could definitely see it like if already my next player is sort of in this mode, like where I'm gonna be trying out something very stupid, like I talked about earlier. But now with the second player thing, I can like sort of just have the not really a test environment, but more of a low pressure environment of
Mhm.
doing the sort of PJ Tucker player build I was talking about earlier, where you play the same way for 14 years or
Yeah,
whatever. And
because you also have the second guy that you can do different stuff with.
yeah, then I can still have the like sort of premium players that I'm very well known for. Uh, that isn't that much of a, or is at least more interesting and more in the conversation for free agency destinations and award winning later in the career. Uh, then you don't get left out of it anymore if you have a second player on the outside ranks. And then also you fill out rosters more, which is key. Because there's,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Tomato already knows my opinions. I'm not a big fan of it. I also wasn't when it was proposed. I think I was very vocal about it back then. Um, there's a lot of small stuff I don't really like about second players being there. One, of course, it's easy to kind of stagger now careers.
yeah,
Because those guys that are eligible for second players, they know how to build their players. They're on their fourth player by then. Um, and if you build a competent player, you can be in around award discussion around like year 5 to year 9, depending on how what play style, how your competition is looking, whatever. Um, not that you're winning the award, but you are around the area where you get consideration. And now you can easily have at least one player at awards level at all time. And I think the guys that are having access to those second players are the least guys that need this success moment of being in this awards conversation. Um, because those guys that are getting could get hurt. Not that it will for surefire happen, but that could get hurt. Unlike the first gens or the guys on their second player, who now have maybe even double the amount of
competition,
well-built
yeah.
veteran players ahead of them in the awards discussion, and are buried underneath this. I mean, that's one of my concerns that I have for this.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and as time goes on and we get more and more of those second players, we will inevitably have to look at expansion. I think Lou has mentioned like 43 players are going to be eligible. for second players soon,
Ooh.
or 30 something,
No, that's
after they
still
finish
very
their current
many.
careers,
I
and that's
think
a
it
lot
was
of
like 30 guys. I think 30 people were eligible. I think
Hmm.
by the time like the thing comes out. Yeah, I guess I'm like on the fence a bit because I can see why people could think it's fun. I can also see why it could backfire. And that's why I'm happy it's at the moment a test run because we tried to make it pretty clear that we're just seeing how it impacts the league at this point, and if it seems like it's a negative impact, then we'll just shut it down. But well, hopefully, like it just works out and lets people do funky stuff with weird builds and using the regression bank instead of just making two MVP caliber players one by one. So I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic about it, I guess.
Yeah, it'll definitely like. It seems like it would be like divided into multiple camps where you like. Obviously, so far I've always tried to make the best player I can, and there's no reason why I wouldn't keep doing the best players I can. But also, it then allows for me to maybe make a less serious player, which is like the two sides of the coin here. Is that if I wanted to make two staggered Grindel Andersons or AJ Harkelwoods or players like that, then I still could. But I think it's already getting a bit boring now. So having two of those, it's maybe even more boring, double the boring. So having an option on the side to spice it up a bit with um, having sort of a more of a weird or unconventional player, it's more fun. So it's definitely, I could see it being divided into groups of people who play as normal and want to have the best player they can, and even those who take it as far to maybe put them out in specific times so they can be, or even just look at the competition at a certain position and make a player that's a shooting guard because there's no good shooting guards under year 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, it's the opposite side of the coin is that you can have a bit extra stuff on the side that doesn't have to be too serious, and then you can also have the serious part. Whereas previously, if you wanted to, like we were talking about earlier, like purposefully bad players, you really don't want to do it for a year because you're just gonna be cast out, and it's gonna be a shitty experience for a lot of teams, and then also for you in the end. But now that you can have like a good player and also sort of a weird experimental player on the side, then it's allowing for more.
That's
Also,
my that's what I hope happens. That we
yeah,
get more Sky Terries, I guess. Because it's a fun thing, even if to just look like I remember like when Sky Terry was in the league, just seeing his box score every time just made me chuckle.
yeah,
But like, it could be fun. I'm hopeful. If it's not fun, you can bet I will be one of the first people to just campaign so we kill it if it needs be.
yeah,
I hope it just works out and it just changes the. I mean, it's a major change, right? Like one way or the other, it's gonna change how the league works. Like,
Yeah, and also a lot of how relationship works. I guess tying into our previous point, relations could be now even more important, especially for veteran users, because could attract two players, not at the same time because I don't think they're allowed on the same team,
yeah, they're not
but you
allowed.
have like double the chance. You know what I'm getting at.
oh, this
Yep.
is the Molholt rule that he would make the best player in the history of the SBA, but you could only have him on your team if you also sign Sky Terry to be your team. Too bad. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they're
but
not allowed
but
to
we
play on
don't
the
run
same team.
issues with like roster sizes where we need expansion again, because I don't think the current talent pool can handle it. I just don't.
But thankfully, we have a couple of teams that we could revive and then just have Trap Hag manage all 4 new teams. Excellent.
I couldn't even get Trap Hack to manage Oklahoma, okay? So like don't count on that.
Yeah, and she couldn't even have me manage Oklahoma, so what gives? Maybe with the new second player, I have double the chance of getting my own player on my team, then I'll be back interested in being a GM.
You see. It's a plan. Okay, guys. This was fun, but I gotta go.
Yes, I think
Yeah,
it's already
yeah.
gone for quite long enough. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for Tomato for being back with our not so complicated topics of this week's or this year's podcast.
5 of the year.
5 of the year. Thank you.